Hi, everyone, and welcome to what I believe is the 7th episode of Storykit Talks. My name is Jonna Ekman, and I'm the marketing director at the amazing SaaS company Storykit, where we work with video and storytelling. With me today, I, of course, have Heidi Bordal, who is our community manager, who is doing all things in the background. And also Fredrik Strömberg, who is the CPO and founder of this company. And what are we going to talk about today? Well, of course, we're going to talk about storytelling. And we're also going to talk a lot about storytelling structure, because the thing is that we've talked a lot about efficiency in Storykit Talks previously. I remember when Peter was here the last time, I asked him, or actually one of the attendees asked him whether quality or quantity is more important. And he said that quantity is 100% more important because you don't know what quality is. So now we're going to talk a bit about how to make sure that you have some kind of quality in your video. And one of those ways is by actually working with structure and formats. But before we go into that, I just want to tell you all who are here listening today, please jump into the chat or in the whatever forum you get to ask questions, because we love answering all your questions, and there are no stupid questions. There are just stupid answers, and we will do those. But let's get into it. We need to be efficient with our storytelling. And I'm an old journalist. Fredrik has been working with content for most part of his life. And we know that if you want to work really efficiently with whatever format, video, text, images, whatever format, you need to work with formats. And we're not talking about aspect ratios here. We're not talking about if it's 69 or if it's square or if it's whatever form it's got. We're talking about actual formats like American Idol or Dancing with the Stars, that are storytelling formats. Boy meets girl, hero meets baddie, you know all those. So, Fredrik, could you tell me a bit more about what formats is and how you define them?
I think I define them like, as you said, like coming from the traditional media world. I try to define formats as two different things, and I think both deserve some kind of mention. You have like your more or less production formats, which are technicalities. It's like an interview, or it's an investigative piece or something like that, which tends to be the way by which you organize your work on a daily basis in a sort of a newsroom or in a bigger kind of information operation. Not so much like the overarching sort of principle of how you plan things, but what you do. I'm going to do an interview with this so and so, and I'm going to do this with so and so, and I'm going to do this. So, and a lot of times we use those formats as some kind of we tend to use those formats also in a sort of audience-facing way. So we say that something is an interview with this person. And it's like, okay, thanks for letting me know. I should probably deduce that from reading the text that I was an interview with, the big interview or something like that. That in itself doesn't bear a lot of meaning, and it says very little about what you are trying to achieve with that content. So I think that you want to use a sort of a definition of formats that has something to do with what you are trying to achieve, right? So a format should be, in my world, a format is both what it's trying to achieve and how you actually go about achieving that in a very sort of structured and very hands-on kind of way. Because when you tell stories to achieve a result, which is the case for most people that are Storykit clients, most people that tell stories actually tell stories to achieve another result than just telling stories. So that differs a lot from the media world, where the stories are the product. A lot of times, we've talked about this in all the other talks almost, is that stories are a way to inform or to market or to do something that sort of moves your business in the right direction. So when you are a storyteller that works in that capacity, you really need to have a firm sort of understanding of why you're telling a story. And that's also built into the format. I mean, we do this way because we want to achieve this. So that's a format. And a format has a ton of other things as well, right? You can use formats. And I know that we're going to talk about a lot about those. I'm not going to sort of preempt this whole discussion. But I mean, format is very rarely the things that we kind of tend to see when we talk about it. It's an interview format. You've heard that said. It's an interview format. Yeah, but sure, but an interview is part of a format. I mean, you have to perhaps do some interviewing to fill up this format. So I think those are sort of two different abstraction levels, or what you like, that you have to sort of keep in mind. It's very hard. It's very hard as a marketer or as a communicator to say that, well, let's do an interview with someone.
Yeah.
I mean, the first question from someone else, your colleague or someone, should be, why?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but it's a very common, like, it's an interview format is a very common way to even name things. I mean, in Sweden, we have the big radio interview, Sunday interview, or the big weekend interview with, I have made a lot of celebrity interviews where the only thing that I knew when I went out was that I'm going to meet a celebrity. And that is a very difficult thing to just, okay, so where am I going to start? What am I going to ask? What am I looking for?
The big interview, when it's planned on a calendar like that, it's a format, right? But then you have sort of decided that this interview in this form, it may be very free form when you're actually on site or in the studio, or like this is a talk, right? This is the format, we're going to talk. The main sort of use we have for this is that it's in the calendar, it's planned, we're going to do it, right? Yeah. And we're going to do it this way because we know what kind of production environment we're stepping into. We know what we have to prepare. We know what we have to do to make this happen. That's the thing. We haven't invented this wheel. This wheel was already put on the car, right? It's there. We need to fill it. That changes that whole creative discussion. And let's talk more about that later. But I mean, that's the thing. Even if it's kind of loosely held, it's still in there. It's planned. There's a placeholder for this. We're going to do this. So I mean, and that's the thing where you have a format, where you have something, even if it's the big interview, you can place it on a calendar. You can place it in a planning document. You can say that this is what we're going to do this. The problem when you're not working with formats of planning is that you say that you're going to do something at some point, right? Yeah. And people kind of tend to like that discussion of what are we going to do discussion. But the what are we going to do discussion is so time consuming and it's so sort of anti-productive. And that becomes a huge issue for all organizations.
Yeah. Also, we're going to move on, but when you listen to one of those, like, they happen every Sunday interviews, you will realize that there is a format in the format. They're not just going in there starting with, hey, who are you? They have a very strict, like, I'm going to try to reach this. And I start with the easy questions and move further to the blah, blah, blah. Even if in like the sitcoms or in the interview situations on TV where you have very short formats, very short interviews, or especially in those, you can see that they're really like, I'm going to get there and I'm going to get there fast. Yep. So it's like that. So why would you say that formats make you a more effective content creator?
I mean, there are so many things or so many reasons why it does that. But I tend to look at it this way. And I've been a writer, I've been an editor, I've been all of the things that you can imagine in a sort of a content creating world. And the thing is, when you work with a great editor responds to you, the content creator, coming up to the editor saying, hey, I have this idea for this great subject. A bad editor would say this: awesome, Jonna, go out and do a thing on that great subject, right? You will figure, cool. And then you will spend a ton of time figuring out exactly how you would sort of cover that subject. It's a great subject, still is a great subject, right? But you're like, oh, I'm kind of left in the dark of what to do with it. So it's up to you as the content creator to do that. That kind of insecurity takes so much time. It's like when you do DIYing something at home, right? When you are installing a something and you have to cut a wooden plank a certain way because you need to have, I mean, you measure not twice, you measure 1,000 times.
Yeah.
You kind of know conceptually what you need to do, but you're so insecure of how to do it, right? So you will measure and Google and measure and look, is there a template? Is there a YouTube video where I can look at someone exactly doing this? If you're a professional sort of carpenter, then you go in, you cut is made, I know exactly what I'm doing. It takes them 5 seconds, it takes you 5 hours. Not because they cut it that much better. You cut it exactly the same place, but because you have to process what you're going to do. A good editor would tell you, first of all, that's a great subject, Jonna. How about you do it in exactly this way? No. Don't do that. Don't do some free reporting on the new Nobel Prize winner. Do it as a restaurant review. It may be like an off-the-wall idea or something, but it's like, oh, that's a super cool idea. And then you're directly into the mode of how you're going to create it, right? It's because you know then what you're going to do. The insecurities of trying to first be creative around the subject and then be creative around form, that is a time vampire. It sucks so much time out of your day, it's almost impossible. It's like, well, yeah, do whatever you want. Do whatever you want is one of the worst things that can ever happen for productivity. So it makes you a better content creator, not just because you get more productive, but also that you sort of, you know what you're striving for. Because if someone tells you to be in this frame, do it like this, then you have something, then you're like, well, I saw a great version of that in the New York Times, or I saw a great video of that from a competitive company on LinkedIn. Let's strive for that, because I now know what kind of box I'm in, right? So that's a huge thing with formats, to be able to tell someone surround that subject with a very strict form. I mean, I think from experience, I know that this works, because I mean, I worked on dailies, I worked on weeklies, I worked on monthlies, and they all have one thing in common, right? They will be done when they're done. They will be done when the printing press goes. So you have to fill in stuff. You have to be super efficient, and you have the exact amount of time to do something, right? And that's where you get some proper help from knowing exactly how you want to do something. So I mean,
it's interesting what you. Sorry,
no.
It's interesting what you're saying, because I've heard so many people thinking that, well, if you give me a format, you will kill my creativity. It will just what should I do with all my ideas?
But the thing is, like, I mean, this is, it's like no cliche. I don't think creativity is about like foraging in the open fields. Creativity thrives and grows in tight spaces. I mean, a good creator knows how to work themselves out of a tight spot. I mean, doing whatever on whatever subject. I mean, it may sound like fun. In reality, take it from me, I work with, like I said, we were talking about age here before. I've been in this business now for almost 30 years, which is so scary to say, but I've been at it for almost 30 years. And I know that the sort of tighter defined the scope is for something, the more fun it is to work with. Because most people that tend to be architects, they want to search out that part of it, right? And it sounds fun first time. Let's just figure out what we're going to do. By the 5th time you're doing it, it's like, didn't we have this meeting already? Didn't we decide this like 3 weeks ago? Is this the same meeting? So creativity doesn't die with formats. It's actually gets sharpened, and you have to do it. The thing is with that is there's an almost deeper thing to being doing a format. Do the same thing. Do the same format once a week for, let's say, forever. Highlight one of your colleagues or whatever in some kind of format that you do. Do that once a week. You will find yourself digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And what you will find when you dig is that you're going to someone unearth a treasure, because you will find out things about those people that you're interviewing that was like, I had no idea. I had no idea that you were the first person to fly a plane over the sound barrier. I didn't know that. So you're working in two. Did you? Yeah, sure. It's like, that's just happened to be a part of my life that I haven't told anyone. It's like, holy crap, we unearthed a treasure. You would have never found that if you were sitting in a meeting. It's like, what are we going to do this week? You would never come to the conclusion that, well, we're going to interview a guy who works down in the workshop who's been here for 50 years. That would never be, it's an idea that never surfaces that way. So formats also allows you to dig and dig and dig and dig deeper. And I promise you, you will find stuff. You will find stuff if you look through your product catalog. You will find stuff if you look through the local regulations for how sort of the sewage waste must be handled. You will find stuff if you keep at it. And that is something that happens with the format. You have this placeholder. You're going to do this. And it's like, okay, so who are we going to cover? What are we going to cover in this exact format? It's a vastly different and much more sort of cool discussion to have around subjects. So I mean, creativity doesn't die because you're not free to do whatever you want. If you want to have total freedom of your creative space, there's a job for that. It's called an artist. And please go ahead. But no.
I also believe that if you have a couple of formats like in your spine, in your head, always looking for them, you will start seeing them everywhere.
Exactly.
Which will like entice creativity instead of putting a lid on it.
Look at have this format that you said, well, so we're Storykit is moving to a new office this Monday, right? So we're switching up, we're moving to another part of town. All right. Let's have the format 3 things in the new neighborhood. And then you start digging. How many 3 things do you think we can come up with if we sit down for an hour? I would say 100, right? I would say we have 100 pieces of content we can do in a format like 3 things in the new neighborhood. If we were to have the discussion, so we're moving to a new office on Monday, what content should we do on that? That's going to be like, yeah. I mean, we could do one. We could like behind the scenes of the move. Yeah, would that be interesting? Like, it just changes the creative discussion to something that is, I think, is so much more productive. It's, I mean, you worked at a daily, or if you worked at a weekly, or if you worked at a monthly, if you worked with anything that has a periodicity to it that you know you have to fill, then you know that you have these people that really like, well, who are we going to interview for we have this mean interview format that we do every week in this weekly supplement, right? Then it's like, it's so much fun to try to come up with who are we going to do? It's like, it's not what we're going to fill this page with. It's who are we going to put through the meat grinder of this interview? It's like, can we get this person to, the discussion is much more fun. Because it also levels the playing field. Let me just say this. It also levels the playing field for creative person, because you can have a meeting where you can ask the question, so what content are we going to do to be better at business? I guarantee you that there's a lot of people in your office that is like, I'm not comfortable in that discussion. I don't think I belong in that discussion. Yeah. If you were to say to people, so give me the names of the coolest colleagues that we can do an interview with, everyone can participate. And everyone knows that, because you have already said that this is the thing I want to do. I just want to have the subject from you. I'm expert at format. You're expert at subject, right? Yeah. And when you've worked when you worked as like a consultant or a storyteller or a content marketer and stuff, sometimes you run into clients that are like, well, I know my stuff. I really know my stuff. I know nothing about storytelling. So you tell me what kind of story, and I will tell you what the cool subject is, right? And then it's like, well, let's just keep this going forever because you have tons of cool subjects. I can do it a ton of times, right? So yeah, it changes the creative discussion in a superb way as well. So it doesn't hinder creativity. I think it's the other way around.
How do you get started with the format and use storytelling formats for planning?
I think that you should start with your needs. I mean, you have some kind of purpose with what you set out to do. You want to sell shoes. You want to inform about the municipality's political endeavors. You want to, whatever you want to do, right? Are you a non-profit that wants to create traction around, collecting money for causes? You have to start with that. You have to understand sort of, do you want to build brand? Do you want to sell product? Do you want something? Start at the highest level, I think, and like create some kind of, I mean, most organizations have some kind of content mix. They want to achieve different things. They want to get people to understand that you're a great employer. They want to look for jobs. They want to know more about you. They want to hear the latest industry news. They want to do tons of stuff, right? So you will probably have a lot of different things that you want to achieve. And they should have equal or non-equal sort of space and place in your kind of content planning. So I will start with that, like, what are the overarching goals that we want to reach? We want to build brand. We want to strengthen our employer brand. We want to create more traction around our recruitment, or we want to do X and Y and Z, right? So start with that, and then try to figure out formats. Find them, build them yourself. Find other sort of people who have done it. Look at competitors, whatever. See if something that you have seen that you think is really good, and then try to kind of sometimes reverse engineer that to see what is this really? Yeah, well, it's this thing is an interview with someone who works at the company, and they talk about this, and then they pivot to this. Well, we could do that. No one owns a format. No one owns a format. I mean, great artists steal. They say steal with pride. I mean, if you see something that's good, just take it. Do it to your own, because you're going to have to do it with your own subject, your own assets, your own things, whatever, right? And I'll be very surprised if the one that you saw was the first one that was ever done in the history of the world, sort of exactly like that format. We could probably.
I have a good story on that. I worked as the editor-in-chief for an entertainment magazine in a very small town. And in big Stockholm, they had the big entertainment magazine, Nöjesguiden. And every month I took their magazine, looked at what they had done, and just did the same things with people from my small town. And no one ever noticed.
Because they had done the same thing with Time Out London or whatever, or something else that we've done. Yeah. We actually went as far as we started correcting other publications at one time at one of the weekly supplements we did in the late 90s, that we started sort of paying it back when people had stolen things. We did corrections, but we did corrections for other publications, which was really fun. So, I mean, no, that's the thing. You can steal whatever format you like. And I mean, someone's going to get, oh, that's exactly the same as we did. Yeah, sure. Which is exactly the same as these people have done since 1962. So, I mean, that's a way to sort of just shorthand it. That's a way to do it, or invent them yourselves. But the thing is, what you want to do is that you want to be kind of thorough in that process. You want to try to explain how this format works, right? You want to tell yourself that, well, this is how we produce it, because that's the thing that's going to get productivity going. So if you see something, you see, well, Storykit made this great kind of colleague interview thing, and you're at the company, and so like, okay, exactly how does this work? Well, they did this. They had this kind of question, and they got this kind of answer, and then they did a kind of a fact piece, and it's like, yeah, do that, but make sure that you do it like that, because that's the way you can get sort of the productive part of it going, right? So you can do, exactly what you're going to do. So, but I think you have to start with like planning out. So what things do we want to achieve, right? What communicative needs do we have? And then you try to figure out something for each of them, preferably many things for a lot of them, right? So you want to have a well-stocked content calendar or content planning thing. You want to do a lot of things because we know only one thing about this day and age, and that is, like I think you started with here today, that quantity beats quality, because quality is like no one knows what it is. And what we're saying here is that if you use formats and you do something really sort of almost paint by numbers and by the book, is that you can control quality in a way that's really good. Which means that you can combine high quality with high volume if you don't spend too much time on, wasting time on figuring out exactly what to do, because you will end up in the same answers anyway. I mean, that reinventing the wheel meeting that you have once a month is just going to reinvent the wheel. It's like, well, we have wheels in the storehouse. Let's use those, right? So I think, I think that's a way to get started. I mean, find whatever with formats, and then kind of just map them into your own planning. It's like, can we do this kind of colleague interview next Friday? Can we have that? Can we have that every Friday? And then you say, yeah, sure, let's commit to that, because that's a part of it also. You have to commit to planning. You have to commit to it, and you have to figure out what goes into publishing something on a Friday. What goes into publishing something on Friday? Well, it probably means starting Friday 2 weeks before. It probably means checking something the Monday before, right? And it probably means a lot of things. But I mean, that's part of what you should do. That's just part of like a hygiene-based planning thing.
Another thing that I've been thinking about is that you need to have the courage to keep doing it, because one of the things I hear is people saying, well, the audience is gonna like grow tired of the format. And my own experience is quite the opposite. The more I'm exposed to a format, the more I like it. I mean, our colleague Alex has his Friday meme thing, and I love it even more every Friday, even though the memes are just worse and worse.
I mean, he's really bad at memes. He's super bad.
I think he's still stealing them. Anyways, maybe he's here listening now.
I hope
so. So you have to, I mean, because when people start creating videos, they're always like, but what if it doesn't work? And they publish 2 videos and they're like, they didn't work. So you really need to do it for a while, and to make the effort to keep going.
That's exactly it, right? There's a saying, that I hear a lot,
we lost you for a second.
Am I okay? Am I back?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So I was doing some content. So I was just technical dropout. No. So one thing that they say in the NBA, in the American Basketball League, is that the best ability is availability. Right. So it's super, super important. You can be a super talented player. You can be a super talented content creator. If you don't show up and if you don't do the job right, then it doesn't matter. You can think until your brain bleeds about how to create that next viral thing. You can put all the eggs in that basket. Or you can go about having a really well-filled content calendar where you output a ton of stuff. Because once again, that thing that, well, people grow tired of formats. Well, that is factually not true. And we know this because we have had media formats that have been going on for 100 years. And people still tend to view them as the best thing, right? Not the worst thing. It's the best thing. The daily survey on the back of the biggest tabloid in Sweden, the so-called US5, it's the most popular thing. When you ask people I always read that. Of course you do, because it's a great format. And it's new people in it every day, and there's a new question every day, and it's easy to digest, and it's easy to understand. You have no cognitive load whatsoever to understanding what this is about. So you create a familiarity, you create an expectation, and you can get down to the actual subject matter, right? So
now we really lost him.
Something. The other thing is that just Your internet connection is unstable. I'm sorry. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you again for a couple of seconds, but
yeah, I'm literally 3 feet from the main sort of router in the house. I mean, I should have really unstable internet. But the thing is, you have to be productive, and I don't think anyone would say that if you have two options, like one is think really hard and really long and be super, super open to creating one thing that's going to go viral. That's your first option. I mean, let's be black and white here. Your other option is to work really, really productive and really structured with outputting a lot of content with fixed formats, but you do a lot of things. What do you think has the highest sort of success chance? Well, I would venture a guess and say that it is being productive and available and doing things at a high tech and trying to get stuff out the door, right? So media and marketing works that way today, right? And formats help you create that in the plans. You have to be like super, super productive.
So when you've done your planning, you've got your formats and you've made your little plan. What about ideation and finding those stories? We've been touching upon it, but do you have any more tips there?
No, I think if you have formats, if you have different formats, if you have, I mean, that can be, they don't have to be in your content plan. It doesn't have to be something that you committed to doing. But looking at the world through a lens or using a grid for something is good, right? It's good, right? It isn't necessarily good. But if you look at things you have tons of information. You have tons of people. You have tons of content. If you're a big organization, there is kind of information everywhere to mine for stuff.
Yeah.
But the problem is that if you have this, let's say you have a product catalog with 48,000 products in it. So let's do something on products, okay? We can do something on products, sure. It's better to look at it from like, okay, this week's detailed focused product video that we're going to look at a specific thing on a specific product. Which product should we choose? Yeah. Better discussion, right? So looking at what you have through this lens of a format and say that, well, it's like this thing I've been talking about now. If you have a format that sort of forces you to interview a colleague, then you will start looking at colleagues in that way. It's like, is that an interesting story? Will that person would that be a good person to interview? If you were, because that means that you have to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. And when you're at your 100th, you better pray that you have 100 employees, right? Because you're going to get every last one of them. If you were to ask the question more general, so who should talk on behalf of the company this week, or then it's going to be C-level executives and some kind of expert every time, right? There's format for experts too. But the thing is, you can look at what you have, people, information, whatever, other content output with a format in mind and say that, well, can I take this can I have this manual? Can I focus on the detail in this and tell you why this is so important? Could I focus in on a frequently asked question from my database and do something with that in a format, right? So just having that mindset while looking at things makes it so much easier. I mean, it's not a hard exercise to do. You can do it real simple. If you were to be asked, like, find me the best images on this website, that's a very much simpler process than find some content on this website, right? It just focuses the search, so you can find content everywhere. And sure enough, you can do it. You can have this internalized, but it could also be something that you have, right? You could have these formats that you have stolen or got them from somewhere else, and you can say that, well, you know what? I'm going to try to see if I think this format looks cool. I've seen it, and I just want to apply that to every kind of information that we have, all the ambient or non-ambient information that's in there. I bet you will find a lot of stuff.
Yeah, one thing that I often think about is trying to find the small story. Because people are always like, I'm going to tell a story. And then they look at, for example, a blog post or a press release and go like, okay, we're going to do the whole thing. And in one blog post or in one thing, you will find a lot of small things that will become even better stories if you have those formats for it. So that's also like a journalist editing thing, to find that little angle that will be an even better story.
And it's almost a forgotten art.
Yeah.
The problem is, I had this very discussion earlier today, outside of this. Where are the supplements? Where are the supplemental pieces gone? Where have they gone? We have this snake on the loose, right, from the zoo in Stockholm.
Yeah.
All right, everyone's writing about snake. I'm like, where are these other things? Like, this snake is like 2.5 or 4 meters long. I don't know. I want to see other things that are 2.5 meters long.
Yeah.
I want to know of other animals that are also escape artists. I want to know about sort of, there's a ton of stuff that's super fun. And when you were in the magazine days, those were the things that were the eye catchers, right? So you had this thing where you could have an 8-page spread. You were like a big interview. It's what the photographers call that gray stuff next to the images, right? So you look at the images, but what you also look at are those small fact boxes, the supplement pieces, the things you didn't know, right? Even if it's a simple sort of fact box, those things, from our standpoint, I've always said this, those make the best videos, right? Yeah. So here are 5 other famous snakes. That's a fun video. I mean, and it leads you to the bigger story. You have to do more than one of them, but that's cool and fun. So find that small story and sort of build the big one with a lot of components, because that's how we tend to receive information now. And I have this sort of old print anecdote from way back when, like where we were working for a client magazine. So it's a big car brand. And we had sent people to the country of origin for this car brand, and they had this sensory laboratory, which was super cool. So they had people in white, lab wear, sniffing into sort of small, like, the car smell, sound things. They were feeling materials, all dressed in white. It was super, like, they were doing the tactile feel of a car, the smell, the feel, the sound. Big laboratory for doing this. Super great text, great images. It was like, this is an 8-page spread, at least in this customer magazine, right? So I, as an editor, I handed this over to this with the images to our art director. So he was like, yeah, I'm going to mock it up for you. So he did 8 or 10 pages. And he came back to me as prints, and I looked at it. And then he had just drawn in boxes, like a black box, a negative box on one spread, another small box. And then he said, you need to create content for these boxes because this is what's going to make it. And I was like, you are 1000% correct. This is exactly what's going to make it. Otherwise, it's just going to be a long text. There's no hooks for me to look at when I sort of just sift through this magazine. They matter. And those are the small stories, and they are great. Well, you can find those small stories everywhere. So I'm totally with you on the small story thing, right? Hardly ever tell the big one. Always tell the small one, right? Make tons of content.
Yeah. And talking about tons of content, I mean, we're always talking about making a lot of content, and using formats is one other thing that'll help you get there. But still, it is a lot of work to create this amount of content. So how would you say that content creators should go about with their limited time, their limited space, the limited everything, budgets? How would you go about to actually start creating a lot of content? And we're not talking about like a video a week, which a lot of people seem to think is a lot of content, but actually maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 a day.
Yeah. You have to ask yourself exactly that, right? So if you're a marketer or a content creator at a company and you struggle with outputting one thing a week, I mean, there are hoops to jump through and stuff, and there are people, there are stakeholders need to. But ask yourself, if you work at a digital news site today, you're outputting 50 to 20 pieces of content per day. That's the rate that they're doing stuff on. Is that good for society? I don't necessarily think it is. But the thing is, they're able to do it in their work time. So the first thing is, if you are a content creator, what are you doing else on your day but creating content? Right? So if that's your job, what's the other part of the job? I mean, I know that there's other things. I'm just trying to make a point here. The thing is that when you don't work with formats, you don't work with like a strict structure, what happens with that time is that the thing we talked about before. You measure it 50 times. You look at a YouTube video because you're not sure what the output is going to be. You don't have a fixed idea or knowledge about what output you're supposed to create. And that is a time bandit. It takes time from you. So you end up, I haven't started yet because I'm not sure about the form of this. While you could have sent out 2 questions to a colleague on the other side of the world and be done with it. That was the first 2 minutes of your working day. Then you went on to find this detail about something in. It comes down to planning and structure and focus. And to do that, you have to know what the output is. You have to reverse calculate your workday, right? You have to know what you're supposed to create to be able to create it in an efficient manner. That could be from formats or it could be from great planning.
Yeah.
Regardless, you have to do that to be really efficient. The way a person on a digital news site can create 15 or 20 articles per day is that they know exactly how it's going to come out. They know this is going to be 1,500 characters. It's going to be this. It's going to be inverse pyramid storytelling. It's going to be exactly this. To the point, this is the source. I have the purpose for it because I'm going to fill it for the clicks. I'm going to fill something. I have the means to do it. I have all the sources that I need. And I also have the right to do it. I know that I can do it, and someone will probably have a look at it and see that it holds, but it will hold because you're a professional and you do it. So I can't stress enough how much you have to decide on what to do. If you do that in Google Sheets or whatever tool you use for it, just do it. You have to figure out that, what goes into creating this piece of content. It's a lot of discrete steps that you have to take. Sometimes they don't follow each other, like from between 9 and 11 in the. Sometimes it's 2 weeks before. Send out the questions to the people you want to do. 1 week before, ask them for an image. Here is everything. It's delivered. Now I can do the final packaging and on. And you will have to have probably a lot of things going on at the same time. But that's not an issue, right? Because you know what you're doing. If you have to sort of immerse yourself in a big process, if you're an author writing a book, you probably shouldn't write 6 books at the same time. I don't think so. But if you're a content creator that works with this kind of purpose, I think you really should have a lot of things going on at the same time. Because you know the output. That's not the creative juice. You have to put it into the detail. You have to write it good. You have to make sure the facts are correct. You have to do all of those things. You have to, measure and do the cut. But when you know exactly how long that piece of wood is going to be and you know exactly how to wield a saw, then that's not the hard work. It's when you don't know that. That's where the time goes. So planning can come from formats. It can also come from that most people really aren't. They need some help with figuring out exactly what goes into the output piece. So I mean, that's my
another thing that we're talking about a lot these days, which I really think that people underuse, which is probably not an English word, but anyways, is repurposing. I mean, I have read like 1,000 threads on LinkedIn or Twitter where it's like how to get out 50 content pieces in an hour, and it's always like you have one blog post and you make it into 5 videos and you make it into 2 Twitter threads and you make it into do. And all of a sudden you have that amount of content pieces built on one single starting piece. And I still believe people are too afraid to do that, but that is actually one of the most efficient ways to work.
It's like if you were to go to a concert.
Yeah.
which happens in non-pandemic type stuff. And then you ask someone in the audience, it's like, so did you enjoy when this artist played the big hit? It's like, yeah, that was so awesome. That's how I feel about, holy crap, I'm so sick of that shit. I am so sick of it, right? Your audience they don't experience this the way that you do, right? We talk about this in like every talk. It's not repetitive for them. It's not like, you don't have to be afraid to use something again. You don't have to be afraid to repackage it, remix it, because they haven't probably seen it the first time. And even if they have, it's not a huge part of their life, right? It's not the most important thing that they saw last month or last year. It's like, shit, I really hope that Jonna at Storykit doesn't do another take on efficient storytelling, because it was so fundamental for me last time. Yeah. So I hope she doesn't destroy that.
Heard once,
distributing it.
Never want to hear it again.
So, and with this, so just, I mean, create something that is efficient, and like we said, it's about availability, and it's don't overthink it, right? It's like, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to think about what's going to work, and I'm going to game the system. I'm going to game the system. I'm going to go viral. I'm going to get this one thing that just keeps on going forever. And it's like, no, don't game the system. Like, system the game instead. Do something every day. Show up, go to work, repurpose, distribute, have formats, be efficient, be productive, be available, right? Then
we got things happening with Fredrik's sound, at least for me. Well, since Fredrik's internet seems to be a bit off. Your internet, you were like a before a while there.
Oh, okay, no, that was the cold. I have a cold. Oh, okay. So that was that. Sorry, that's just deliberate. My voice. Thank you for pointing that out. No,
I think we need to start wrapping this up. We've been talking a bit longer than we usually do, but it was really interesting, and I loved having you, Fredrik. I haven't seen any questions. Feel free, because we're keeping on for a couple of seconds, but if not, I want to thank everyone. I also want to tell you that we are working on something really, really interesting connected to the talk we've just had, and you will see our own efforts. You will see our own efforts to start doing a lot of formats and storytelling formats over the coming couple of weeks, months. So please follow us on join our Facebook group, video and social media, and you will see all that is happening. Heidi, did you see any more questions somewhere where I didn't see them?
I haven't seen any.
No.
Looks like you're all good.
We are crystal clear. But anyways, thank you, Fredrik. Thank you, Heidi. And thank you all of you who has been here to listen to this, and see you again in 2 weeks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.